Welcome, Minister Matthews. Minister Matthews was first elected to the Ontario Legislature in 2003 as MPP for London North Centre. She was re-elected in 2007, 2011, and 2014. She currently serves as Deputy Premier and Minister of Advanced Education and Skills Development and Digital Government. She has served as President of the Treasury Board, as Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, as Minister of Children and Youth Services, and Minister responsible for women's issues. As Minister of Children and Youth Services, Minister Matthews introduced the Poverty Reduction Act in 2009, which legislates an ongoing government commitment to poverty reduction. She also played a key role in the establishment of the Transformative Ontario Child Benefit, a cornerstone of the poverty reduction strategy. A lifelong resident of London, Deb Matthews has been actively involved in community organizations in the London area. Minister Matthews served as president of Big Sisters of London, coordinated the capital campaign for the Boys and Girls Club of London. She volunteered with Orchestra London, the Thames Valley Children's Centre, the Canadian Institute for the Blind, and the Salvation Army. Her annual community book drive has collected tens of thousands of books destined for young readers. And Minister Matthews, thank you for being with us today.
I am delighted to be here. Thanks, Pedro.
So let's get right into it. In the last budget, free tuition for low and medium income households was a real highlight, and especially for those of us who have been working on poverty reduction. So congratulations on that. How did we get here, and how are you approaching the development of this transformative policy?
Well, I have to say, Pedro, that this initiative is enormously exciting, and it was fantastic to be part of it. So really what we are trying to do is focus on outcomes so that all of our programs we're putting through that, what are we getting for our money, and where can we work better together as ministries to get better outcomes. So it's very much driven on better outcomes. And when it comes to student financial aid, it's all about supporting people who need it to get the post-secondary education that that will help them achieve their full potential. So it was about breaking down barriers. And I have to be really clear, there are financial barriers for sure, but I think that the perceived barriers might, in many cases, even be stronger than the actual barriers, because we do have a generous student aid plan now. It's just that it's so difficult to navigate, and people think that they can't afford to go on, or their parents think they can't afford to go on. And so we need to we need to address the perceived barriers as well as the actual barriers. So part of that is making it much simpler program, more robust, so more support, and making sure that we get the message out to people who will benefit from it. So on the next slide, this was the Why Access Matters slide. This slide was brought to us at Treasury Board, and I tell you, got the attention of everyone. So what this shows us that Ontario overall has higher post-secondary participation rate than the rest of Canada, but kids in the poorest families have way lower participation rates than kids in higher income. And that just is leaving a ton of potential out of our post-secondary education. So this was really the guiding information. How do we increase the participation rate of the lowest income people? And while finance isn't the only part of that, it's a really big part of it. So that's what drove us. We did have, as I say, a pretty robust but complicated set of grants and loans and tax credits. So we actually brought together both the Ministry of Finance that administers the tax credits and the Ministry then of Training Colleges and Universities, and said, okay, put all the money on the table. Take the money that we're spending on tax credit, hundreds of millions of dollars, accessed mostly by people from higher income families, actually, and combine it with the grants, and let's start over. Let's develop a new way to support students, and one that addresses the concern that we want more people from low-income families going on. So we put together a new program that works out to free tuition for students with family income under $50,000. Students will know up front what their net tuition will be, so that's their tuition less any grants and loans. Very important to me as someone who went back to school as a mature student that mature students will be treated just like everybody else. And we're increasing the loan maximum so that people will have to rely less on outside lenders. So the bottom line is that 90% of college students and 70% of university students from families with incomes under $50,000 will actually have significant contribution, not just free tuition, but well beyond that. We will actually also be supporting the other costs associated with going to school. So that's a big nutshell, but that's kind of what we're doing.
Terrific. Maybe we can come back to this question around financial and perceived barriers, but before we go there, you mentioned the bold ambition around this program, and we all know that even when we have the best intentions about creating changes in government, these can be derailed by silos and just various mandates across various departments. It seems that there was real collaboration across various ministries and with community stakeholders around developing this strategy and really getting a broad buy-in that this was the right thing to do. So as we think about transformation at this scale, what are some lessons learned in terms of your engagement with stakeholders and some of those early conversations, as well as importantly the cross-ministerial buy-in and collaboration? How did that unfold over time?
So I have to go back a few years actually, where OSA, the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, which is a fantastic organization, I have to say, they really have a strong policy shop. They put together a proposal, presented it to me. I remember exactly where I was when I sat down with them, and what they said is, you don't need to spend any more money. You're spending enough money, but you're spending it in the wrong places when it comes to student financial aid. So here's what you could do to actually achieve the outcomes you're looking for. So they had done some really strong policy work, and that was the kind of precondition. Then I became president of the Treasury Board, and my job as president of the Treasury Board was to get us back into balance as a province, but do it in a way that didn't negatively impact the services we provide to Ontarians. So the approach we took was what we called it program review, renewal, and transformation. And we identified a number of areas, we called them boulders, where if ministries worked together, we could achieve better outcomes for no more money or even less money. And so because of the work that OSA had done, I wanted to make student financial aid a boulder, because that would force that collaboration. So this is not easy for government to break down those boulders. And what I said earlier, we were spending hundreds of millions of dollars on grants, on tax credits rather, that were not upfront. They weren't there when people needed them. They were disproportionately going to higher income people. So we actually are ending those grants and putting all that money into upfront student aid, and that happened because we had to push to make that happen, but we knew we could see a much better system if we all worked together, and that's what we did. And now I hear New Brunswick is following suit, and last night I heard the Democrats saying they're going to do the same. So that's great.
It's good to see that good ideas can take flight. So congratulations.
Thank you. But I have to underline that the good idea came from the students themselves, and then we implemented. So it matters.
I think that's a very hopeful sign for everyone who's on the phone who works outside of government and who advocates for policy, to certainly hear the message that coming forward with well thought through proposals is a way to influence what happens on the other end. So good lesson learned.
And I have to say the College Student Alliance too, which represents college students, they were right there as well with this. So it was OSAP and the College Student Alliance. We've got lots of proposals in as government. What was unusual about this proposal was that it actually acknowledged our reality, which was there wasn't a lot of new money to spend. So that's a good lesson too.
Nice feather in their cap. I'm wondering what happens now in terms of next steps for launching the program. There's been a lot of momentum around this. There's certainly been a lot of positive receptivity to the idea. So how do we bring this concept into action now?
So we are madly developing, consulting with lots of people who have good ideas on implementation. So, and we want to get this rolling out soon. So starting this school year, there will be a new Ontario student grant. We will be expanding eligibility to include mature students. We'll be increasing the maximum loan amount and indexing it all to inflation. So this year, for students this year, they will be eligible for the Ontario student grant. Next year is, for me, what is really exciting, this net tuition billing idea. So students will be able to go online, enter just a little bit of information, and they will know upfront what their net costs will be. We're significantly reducing the expected amount of parental contribution and spousal contribution. Those were very, very high, and we're bringing those down. And we're actually increasing access to loans. This isn't just about low-income families. It's about middle and higher income families as well. So if the family income is under $160,000, they'll still benefit.
Fabulous. Minister.
Pedro, the other thing I want to talk about, and you'll get sick of hearing me say this, but we're getting the technical details right. We are going to be doing our best to educate people about the changes, but there is a really strong belief in a lot of families. We've done some work on this, and there's a really strong belief that the post-secondary education is simply not an option. So we're going to need everybody who's on the line now talking about, yes, you can go on. We need people to be spreading the word that students will never be prevented from going on as a result of not being able to afford it. Students are still going to have to work hard. They're going to have to get themselves in. They're going to have to do all that, but financial barriers will not stand in the way. So we've got some serious myth busting to do.
Minister, you've mentioned the financial and perceived barriers to post-secondary education as working hand in hand. I know that your ministry is working alongside other ministries to look at some of the barriers that are not financial, and looking at a comprehensive strategy to post-secondary education accessibility that's looking at all the root causes and is really trying to make sure that you get underneath the reasons why some communities, some groups don't move ahead when it comes to post-secondary education. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of that work that parallels this free tuition and what you're hoping to achieve with that?
So you and I worked hard together on our first poverty reduction strategy. It was focused on kids because when you have a strategy, you have to be strategic, and so the research very clearly shows that the best way to break the cycle of poverty is through education. So yes, this initiative is fantastic for students who have been successful in high school, but we need to go way back to full-day kindergarten for 4- and 5-year-olds, significant improvements in graduation rates. So it's hard to believe that 13 years ago when we were elected, the graduation rate for high school students was only 68% of kids graduated from high school, and now we just cracked 85%. So a whole lot more kids are graduating as a result of a whole range of initiatives in our education system that are really focusing on breaking down barriers to success for kids. And our new education minister, Mitzi Hunter, is making that achievement gap her highest priority. So it's getting kids to do better in school. Part of that's in the education system, but a lot of that happens at home too, as you well know. Everybody on the call will know. If a family is not in stable housing, or if there isn't enough money to feed the kids, or if there's abuse happening in the home, or a whole range of issues outside of the classroom, well, we need to address all of those as well.
Great, thank you for that. We'll now move into the Q&A session, part of our call. We have about 15 minutes to address questions, or we have a little bit more time than that, to address questions and encourage you on the line to submit your questions through the chat box in your go-to control panel. We have some questions that were submitted prior to the webinar, so we will start with those, and then move to the questions that you are typing in through your questions box. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. And the first question that we pulled from the pre-poll is actually one of my favorite questions, Minister, which is about the coordination between OSAP and Ontario Works, and specifically the living expense funding that OSAP provides to people who aren't allowed right now to receive Ontario Works and OSAP simultaneously, and what this program means for that.
So Pedro, I think you and I are going to have to sit down to talk this one through. This is about when people are on OSAP, they generally don't qualify for Ontario Works. There are some instances where they do, but that's kind of the way it works, because OSAP is a bit more generous than OW. So, but I do want to hear from you in another venue about what you think we need to do.
Great, and I'm very glad that the door is open to that discussion. It's been on our agenda for a long time, so I'm looking forward to getting down to it. Thinking about post-secondary education institutions, they will conceivably have an influx in the number of students as a result of this policy. Are there any concerns about students enrolling without thinking through their career paths, increasing dropout rates, and what some of the dynamics might be around that?
So, I don't think so, Pedro. I think that everybody, regardless of their income level, they're making a sacrifice going to school, and they'll make that decision carefully. In fact, I think that people with lower incomes might make an even more careful decision than people who have parents who are paying the full freight. So, we're going to we are looking at the university funding formula. That is a big part of the work that we're doing right now. But this will make it more affordable and easier to access. I hope. I mean, our whole goal is to increase the participation rate in those low-income families. I don't think they'll be much different than the kids who are already going on.
Okay.
The other thing that I will add to that is some students who are the first in their family, the first in their community to go on, may need different supports and stronger supports once they get into those post-secondary institutions. So we have to make sure that those student supports are really robust.
Great, thank you. Just to clarify a question on the chat box, yes, the program will start next academic year, that's 2017-2018, and this is sort of the year where the government is thinking through the implementation. So the start for the free tuition is 2017-2018. Yes. Minister, I know that you're a big fan of evidence-based decision-making and policy. As of right now, can you tell us a bit about your plans for evaluating the impact of this change? What will it mean for poverty reduction, health equity in the short and long term, and how will you know that this program is making a difference?
So part of the work we're doing now is actually developing those metrics. But one that for sure I will be watching very carefully is participation rates of lower income kids from lower income families and those groups that are underrepresented in our campuses. So we will be taking that really good look at is this making a difference? And if it isn't, and we know that people are not going for financial reasons, if we've done a really good job communicating that the financial barriers are gone, we're going to have to double down on other parts of the work we're doing to make sure students are comfortable and know that university or college is there for them. There are some really good programs, not enough of them, but the ones that are working are very effective, that really introduce kids who've never been beyond the university gates to what's available at university, because they have to see themselves in that setting. There's a whole bunch of kids in this province who just can't imagine themselves being there. So we're going to have to work really hard to make sure that everybody can see themselves there.
Great. We are having great questions are coming forward, Minister, and there are a few questions that relate to line of sight between post-secondary education and eventually a job and a career.
Yes.
And so those are sort of the bookends or the motivators, I guess, that bring people into post-secondary education and that then hopefully create moments of truth in terms of, getting a good career that sets you on a good path. What is and I know that your ministry is certainly about bringing all of these pieces together. Can you tell us a little bit about the thinking that's going on around how this free tuition initiative is going to parallel some of the work that's going on in terms of better connecting job opportunities with educational outcomes?
Thanks for that, Pedro. So just a couple of weeks ago, we released a report on the highly skilled workforce. And it really, Sean Conway, former education minister, had a panel and put together, I think, a really strong report. And I urge people to take a look at it. And they are really they've issued a call to action on behalf of government and business and everybody else. I mean, this is absolutely a shared responsibility. In fact, they even called the report a shared responsibility. And one of the recommendations in that report that's receiving a lot of interest is that we have a much better integrated learning and working set up in the province, and that every student, when they graduate from high school, and again when they graduate from college or university, have a work integrated experience. So that might be a co-op placement, that might be, there are different models, but really bringing business into post-secondary and taking post-secondary into businesses and other employers like the United Way. We're going to need a whole lot more employers taking on students and training them and potentially hiring them when they graduate. So we've got a lot of work to do on that front, and the Premier has given me my marching orders that my big responsibilities most definitely include making sure we get this free tuition properly landed, and we take some significant steps forward on the recommendations from that report, which I'm very excited about. In fact, one of the reasons we've been able to increase our graduation rates from high school are some of the initiatives that do actually put kids in the workplace. The specialized majors program is hugely successful in keeping kids in school and keeping them and make sure they get graduated and exposed to career opportunities.
That's terrific, and certainly a great challenge to issue to everyone in terms of figuring out how they can be part of the solution in terms of creating better connections.
I'm a challenge out to all employers. You know, could you take a co-op student in? And everybody can if they think about it.
Right. Minister, sectors like construction, advanced manufacturing, the trades, those are increasingly areas where, you know, we can estimate that there will be high demand in terms of labor force needs, and those seem to be more and more prominent in terms of the government's skills development strategy. That balance, right, between the traditional BA and the more applied education is certainly something that seems to be front of mind for you.
No question about it. I mean, what we need to do is make sure everybody maximizes their potential. So, you know, for some kids, university bound is what is the right fit. Others college, other apprenticeship, other skills training. But we do know for sure that the jobs, we used to say the jobs of tomorrow, but it's really the jobs of today, require different sets of skills, and we need to make sure we're graduating students with the skills they need to be successful, keeping in mind that all of us are probably going to have multiple careers in our lifetime, and we need to get a lot more agile when it comes to retraining.
Yes, and to that end, the side of your ministry that relates to workforce development has certainly been quite focused in the views of many in terms of moving towards a more strategic approach to recognizing that we are going to have various jobs and careers in our lifetime, that we are going to need support along the continuum of workforce development at various stages, and that those systems need to work much more closely together. And we need to have a workforce development strategy, not a workforce development, not a number of workforce development silos that are like ships in the night. Wondering your thoughts on, not that you don't already have enough on your plate, but your thoughts in terms of the reform on that side of your ministry.
Yeah, and this was an area very clearly highlighted in the highly skilled workforce report. I mean, one of the things we need is much better data. We do not have good labor force data, and it's kind of stunning to me, I would say, that, you know, we spend a lot of money on workforce development, but not having that actual information in a timely way is a real problem. So we're working on some pretty exciting and ambitious ways to address that. But, you know, we deal too much with anecdotal information, but I'm going to give you a piece that for me was a sit up and take notice moment. Here in London, we have a terrific and growing IT sector. And they tell me that they've got 400 vacant jobs right now, and if they fill those 400 jobs today, they'd have 400 more on Monday. So not having access to people with the right skills is really hampering their ability to be successful. So we need to make sure we've got the right balance.
That's great to hear. There is a question around the grant programs that will remain under the new free tuition program, and whether they will be scaled, whether there will be a sliding scale, so that those who have the greatest need will receive the greatest funding overall. Are you at a point now where you can share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is entirely needs-based. So the reforms are very much based on what the family income is, and those with the lowest income will get the most aid, and many will be able to graduate debt-free, Ontario debt-free, because the grants will not only cover tuition but cover living costs as well. So there are we're collapsing many programs into one, but there are some programs, some grants, very specific, targeting very specific populations that will remain. But the whole focus of this is to make it needs-based and also to have a very smooth gradient, so that your income doesn't, or your grant doesn't drop to zero once you cross a $1 in income increase. So those design details are being worked through now, but what I can tell you is this is all about access for low-income kids in low-income families.
Great. Another question asks if adult learners who are currently modest or middle income or low income who go back to school, will they be able to access this program? And also a question around master's degrees. Would they be included as part of your vision moving forward?
So one of the great improvements is that mature students will be treated exactly the same way as dependent students. And this is enormously exciting. So those single moms out there that have always dreamed of going but haven't had the opportunity will now have that opportunity, and they'll get a lot of support to do that, not just tuition but their living costs as well. The Ontario Student Grant is 4 years of eligibility. So just like OSAP, it doesn't matter which 4 years, but you're entitled to 4 years of support. And then beyond that, there is some support, but I'll leave the technical details for later. But there is support, but it's not as generous as those 4 years.
So I'm hearing that this could cover graduate students with a past degree.
Yes. Of course, many graduate students do have income as TAs and so on, right? So, but yes, it absolutely would cover graduate students as well.
An interesting question on whether students will need to pay back the funding if they don't finish.
No, there is no payback. Think there should be?
Well, we know that many people don't finish their degree in a straight 4-year line. So sometimes it will take people 6 years to do a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
So I think that we certainly, my perspective is we certainly should not be penalizing what we know is the reality of many people, and there's a number of reasons why people choose to do that.
I would agree with that. So no, we don't now, and we won't in the future.
Interesting question on will the program work retroactively to help people repay loans?
If I had $1 for every time I've been asked that question, I'd be a very wealthy woman. The answer is no, it is not retroactive. And it is on a go forward. Much as I would have loved to have made it retroactive, it is not retroactive.
Switching gears here a little, and this is putting on your sharp political hat, Minister. Was there existing political support for this idea when it was first raised, or was there opposition? And if there was opposition, how did you make the case to convince the naysayers that this was the right thing to do?
Well, the way it's designed is we're using the same amount of money that we spent before. So the money that used to be used for tax credits is being repurposed so that students get that money up front. They don't have to bridge finance. They get it when they need it. It takes it's a far better use of money. So yeah, there are people concerned that that we are taking away a tax credit, but the evidence is pretty clear that those tax credits were going to people who already had the highest incomes, and that's not the purpose of student aid. So, when you think of outcomes-focused policy, the outcomes we were looking for, the grants, the program we had with tax credits before did not match the outcomes we were trying to achieve. So it's it did require some education on my part, I would say, but overall, once people saw the art of the possible, I would say they've become very supportive of it.
Great, so supportive that, as you mentioned off the top, there are many jurisdictions that are now also going down this road. It certainly seems to be there certainly seems to be a growing recognition that having an educated population in a growingly competitive global environment is the right thing to do, and fairness needs to be at the heart of that.
Well, you know, every child has got a huge potential. And if we are putting up barriers to achieving that potential, well, shame on us, from both a moral perspective, but also from an economic perspective. You know, we in Canada are going to be competing, are competing in the world, not based on our cheap labor, but based on the knowledge and skills of our population. So, you know, having a highly educated, literate population is something we all should be striving towards.
Great. Taking you back to the school, the high school, a comment on the workforce development piece in the very beginning on the role of guidance counselors in high schools. There's an argument that there's just not sufficient time to prepare students to pick university and college courses and workforce preparation, and that you know, on the socioeconomic gradient, those schools that are on the low end have the least capacity to be able to do some of that in-school work. Any thoughts on working with the Ministry of Education on that front? Yeah,
absolutely, and in fact, Minister Hunter and I have already been talking about exactly that. This is a massive change, and guidance counselors are right on the front lines. Guidance counselors and parents are right on the front lines. So one of the things we're doing is working closely with guidance counselors to, and we've got an app that we're developing that will help them actually on a one-by-one basis with their students explain what net tuition is going to be. And there will be a lot of very surprised kids and their parents when they find out that, you know, they can go to post-secondary and not incur any debt at all. So that will be great. But the whole, I think it's a bigger issue that you've raised. I actually had not heard that schools in low-income neighborhoods didn't have as robust guidance departments. I'm gonna find out more about that. But guidance counselors have a really important job to do, and we need to support them and support that whole process of choosing where to go when you finish high school.
It's a very interesting discussion that we don't have to get into today around grants that are allocated to lower income schools and how those grants are actually being used and what the outcomes of some of those grants are. One of the things that is quite commendable about the government's approach to poverty reduction is that you have not done it in a generic way, and I think you know, especially with the latest move around the Anti-Racism Secretariat, there's an acknowledgement around issues related to racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and how those play as barriers to the kinds of outcomes that we want to see all kids achieve. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about your own championing around this, around the cabinet table, and how it is that the provincial government has managed to make, you know, what can be sometimes politically sensitive issues so core in terms of your policy approach.
So, you know, this is a really, really important issue, and I'm delighted that Michael Coteau is the new minister responsible for the anti-racism secretariat. He's perfectly positioned to do that. The numbers speak for themselves on this, Pedro, as you well know. There are poverty is definitely poverty rates are different for different parts of our society, and there's no reasonable explanation for that. So we've got really important work to do. I heard Ursula Franklin yesterday, a replay of an interview she did, and she said, peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice in the absence of fear. And, those are pretty powerful words, and I think that's the kind of Ontario we need to strive to, where people are not afraid, and that society is fair, that the systemic racism, that whether we like to believe is there or not, it does exist, and it is borne out in lots of statistical analysis. So we need to really double down and make sure that this is a place that provides true freedom and justice, and a place where everybody can achieve their potential. And that's not a simple challenge, but it's one that we as a government are facing straight on.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. And I keep taking these questions high level and very applied, but I don't feel bad because as a cabinet minister, this is probably what you deal with on a minute-by-minute basis. But we have some more eligibility questions.
Sure, let's try. And if I don't know the answer, I'll be honest about that, but we will get you answers. Fabulous.
So a number of questions on how is the household going to be assessed financially. If it's one parent who earns $150,000 and one who earns $25,000, what's the formula on that? Also, some questions related to immigration status and what is the base requirement to access the program. And finally, just a question on maximum amount of funding that people are eligible for each year. And Minister, you can also direct the participants on the webinar today to where it is that they can get more Q&As in terms of this eligibility question. So let's start with how families are being assessed financially. So is it on a household income, household overall income, or how do you account for different parents and different members of the household making different incomes?
Yeah, it's the combined parental income. I think it's line 150 on the income tax form. So that's not changing, the definition of household income.
Great.
It doesn't matter if it's one person earning everything or whether it's split or how it's split.
Great, thank you. Immigration status. What is the base status required to access the program?
So this is for Ontario residents going to a Canadian public institution. So this does not apply to people who are going abroad for their education, but if you're going to another Canadian institution, it does apply.
Fabulous. What is the maximum amount of funding people are eligible for each year?
So that's going to vary depending on a number of factors, whether they're living at home or whether they're away from home, the tuition of the program that they're in. So it is, it'll be a personalized number. But we do calculate the cost of education, including not just tuition, but books and fees and living expenses. So OSAP has a pretty sophisticated, how much is it going to cost you? We do continue to expect the student to contribute to that overall cost. We have that expectation in as $3,000. So what they do is they add up all the costs of going to school, including tuition. $3,000 is assumed to be paid for by the student, although if there are exceptions to that. So if you've got a child, you're exempt from that. Parents' contribution, as I say, we're significantly decreasing that, and that is very much income-based. We're looking at consideration for family size, how many in the family are in post-secondary. So it's very much a every calculation is different, which is why having that net tuition calculator on the website is a really important tool, so people will be able to get answers to that question as it relates to them and their program and their circumstances.
Great, thank you for that. Well done. Let's spend the last 5 minutes that we have talking about the poverty reduction strategy. Minister, recently with the federal government's new child benefit, we're poised to see some real movement in terms of the original target that you set back in 2009 around reducing child poverty in Ontario. Just wondering, these are never short-term, easy initiatives. These are things that take time, that take patience, they take real political commitment and leadership. And it seems like we're now at a place that is going to really, thanks to the provincial and federal governments working together, that we're going to be in a place to really see some progress. Just wondering how you're feeling about that, and your thoughts on the moment that we're in right now.
So I am totally over the moon. I have to say, I am totally over the moon. When we did release that initial strategy that you were so helpful on, Pedro, we set a target of reducing child poverty by 25% in 5 years. And we were very clear that we could achieve that only if the province did what the province has done and that the federal government stepped up. So the federal government did not step up. They did nothing to actually support that goal. But this new government has now, they're flowing the money. The money is flowing now. It will have a substantial impact on child poverty. It is a very generous Canada Child benefit. It will have a profound difference. It'll really change the trajectory of hundreds of thousands of kids across the country. So we will achieve that 25% reduction plus. We'll do better than that. It's taken us longer than the 5 years because we needed the federal government. The federal government, Justin Trudeau and his government, and Kathleen Wynne and her government, like we all just think that we should not have child poverty. We're too wealthy a province and country to have kids who don't have enough to eat and don't have a safe place to live. So it demonstrates to me that government really does matter. And there's a lot of cynicism out there about what they're all the same. People think all parties are the same, all governments are the same. Well, they're not. And this is sort of Exhibit A. If you care about these issues, there are some political leaders out there who care about it, and there are some who don't. So I'm thrilled that we're moving forward. And I tell you, it's been a result of tireless advocacy by a lot of people who are on this call right now. And I would say don't let up on it, because this is demonstrating that we can make progress, but there's still a long way to go before we truly have the kind of society that we think we deserve and we aspire to. Those are wise words, Minister, and for many of us to see good public policy actually delivering results, I think just speaks volume about what happens if you invest wisely and if you invest well, and that doing something is so much more powerful than doing nothing. So this is a very important moment. I want to congratulate you for that, and certainly to thank you for your long-term view and also your spirit of collaboration that has helped deliver on Ontario Child Benefit Poverty Reduction Strategy. Now this free tuition initiative. All of these are certainly in line with the theme of fairness. And as you mentioned in the middle of this webinar, they're also quite key to the well-being of our communities and to the prosperity of our economy. It all works hand in hand. You've been the subject of advocacy for a few years now. Many people, including the more than 300 people who are on this call, are often pushing you and working with you and really wanting to see progress on poverty.
As some final thoughts, any advice for all of us who have saddled up for the long haul, who are going to be doing this for many, many more years, and who know that this is not going to be easy? What's your advice to us, being on the side of government?
So you know that I was minister responsible for the poverty reduction strategy on 2 separate occasions. I have handed that over to Chris Ballard, who is a fantastic advocate on these issues. So he is carrying the torch now, but we're all right with him. So my advice is let's just continue to make progress. Government, we have a lot of competing demands that we have to balance. So I think this free tuition initiative flows from the fact that the advocacy groups understood what government's challenges were, and they presented a solution that actually we could implement. So I think praising progress when there is progress and advocating for future progress are really important. The other thing is, you know, I've been knocking on doors for many, many years, and I can tell you that the issue of poverty reduction has come up only a handful of times, and that's we need to do a better job making poverty reduction a priority for all of all voters, all citizens. I would love to have more politicians hearing more frequently from people who are advocating for action on this front.
This brings us to the end of our webinar and question period. I wanted to thank you for being part of today's broadcast. Your candor, your passion, your leadership, just amazing, and also for sharing your collaborative wisdom with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's fun to talk about it.
I also wanted to thank all of you who attended today for your thoughtful questions. For more information about poverty reduction, you are invited to subscribe to Vibrant Communities' monthly newsletter. It's called Cities Connect, and to join the Vibrant Communities online learning community for poverty reduction practitioners at www.vibrantcanada.ca. If you enjoyed today's webinar, you can look at your screen for another opportunity around learning as part of Tamarack's programs. And in a few days, you will receive an email with a link to an audio recording of today's call. You may also email Natasha at tamarackcommunity.ca. Her email is on your screen to provide feedback about today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day, and thank you, Tamarack, for convening this conversation.